Most people think remote and hybrid is only for tech companies. And it's so untrue. I feel like leadership in a lot of organizations are just not being truthful. And I think that's why people are really upset. They reached out and they said, hey, we've noticed something from our employees. As the pandemic was getting safer to get together, they were like, wow, people are really happy. I got rid of my office and now I feel closer, more connected to my employees. And it was just shocking.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Heroes of Hybrid Work. On today's pod, I'm very excited to welcome Kaleem Clarkson, remote work advocate, people operations professional, and speaker. He is the Chief Operating Officer of BlendMe Inc., a fractional people operations consultancy that helps startups and small businesses transform into high-functioning remote or hybrid remote workplaces. With nearly 20 years of strategic operations experience, he helps leadership implement people ops solutions that increase productivity and engagement for both internal and external stakeholders. He has been featured in Harvard Business Review, named to LinkedIn's top 10 voices in remote work, a 2023 top remote work influencer by remote.com, and so many more. The list goes on. He's passionate about work-life integration and maximizing the remote employee experience, which is why he's joining us as a hero of hybrid work today. Kaleem, thank you so much for joining us.
Jenny, thank you. And hearing that stuff, I started blushing a little. It's weird to hear your stuff and your accolades, repeat. It's like it's hard to get used to. You know what I mean? I'm just a person. I'm just trying to, one person at a time, just trying to change the world. That's all.
That's awesome. I love to hear it. So let's jump in. Can you share your story and your background with the audience? How did you become a top voice on remote work?
Yeah. It's interesting how things happen and you don't plan it. So for anyone out there, if you have a side hustle, go ahead and do it, okay? Because that's exactly how this started. My partner, she graduated from the University of Connecticut with her master's degree in organizational development and human resources in the 2010-ish timeframe. And myself, I'm a former event planner, started a charity when I was in college, thought I was going to be a rock star, I was in a metal band, you know what I mean? Like put on all these concerts called Concerts for Charity. Really, really proud that I did that in my early career. And then when we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, I took a job at a university as the director of operations and strategic initiatives for a faculty development center. So teaching faculty how to teach. So I was in charge of, making sure we had reports, learned a ton about process, learned a ton about operations, syllabus design, course design, motivation, workshops, speaking. I couldn't, I never thought I would speak, but like when I was there, I was like, I can actually talk a little bit, and learning how to do workshops and keeping people interactive, things like that. At the same time, someone asked me, one of the bosses came to me early, probably in the first 6 months, hey, we need a password protected website. So I went to ITS and they learned this thing called Drupal. Shout out to the Drupal community. If you don't know, Drupal is just like an open source software like WordPress, right? Yep. So I taught myself how to be a web developer. So during those times, I had a chance to go to DrupalCon Denver, and that was in 2012. And I heard an individual give a talk. His name is Matt Westgate, is the CEO of a company called Lullabot. And, they do huge websites like Grammys.com, MarthaStewart.com, CNBC, so huge websites. Yeah. And the title of his talk was something around I can't even remember. I got to probably look this up. But it was like, how I built an award-winning culture with no office or something like that, right? Okay. So I go to this talk and he's showing pictures. Mind you, it's 2012. Yeah. So way before. So you're not seeing pictures on LinkedIn of retreats. That didn't happen. Yeah. So he's showing pictures of all of his employees working all over the country from different places, like on ski slopes or whatever, in the mountains. And then he showed the picture of his retreat, and it was all of them there. And he said, not to the T, but he said something along the lines of, I've never felt closer to my employees than since we've gotten rid of our office. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? You got rid of your office? Yeah, I got rid of my office, and now I feel closer, more connected to my employees. And it was just shocking.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because yeah, you have an office, you see people every day, but it's just like high school. You get in your cliques really easily, right? And you go in, you do your job, and you leave. Yes, you may have the water cooler talk that so many people are desperate to talk about that we've already been proven that innovation actually doesn't happen there. But anyway, that's a whole different story. Um, but you don't have those intentional moments. So at their retreat, they didn't do any work. It was all about connection. So I found that fascinating. So
Yeah.
on my flight home,
That's awesome.
I was thinking about, Jennifer had some struggles at the time looking for employment because, again, her master's degree is organizational development, human resources, but every job back then was all about benefits, all about payroll, all about the things that she did not study.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I approached and said, hey, why don't we start this company that only consults with companies who are fully remote. So if
Okay.
at that time, if people, we did some inclusion and diversity work. We still do that as a service, do internal marketing. We do some things that other businesses were interested in. And I had contacts in the development space.
Yep.
But we took a stand in 2013 that
Amazing.
no, we don't want to be the company that's trying to convince organizations to go remote. And we only want to work with companies who are fully remote. So that's what we did. Left it as a side hustle. And
That's
then
awesome.
now we're
And
here
that's
today.
Blend Me still?
Blend me.
Oh,
Yep.
that's Blend Me. Okay, okay,
Hmm.
awesome. That's a great story, Kaleem. I love your focus on intentionality. If I could dig in a little bit there.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the CEO was extremely intentional about building connection in this remote environment.
Hmm.
How do you think we can take learnings from that and apply it to this hybrid world that is becoming much more integral to corporations? Is there a way that we can also be intentional when we have employees remote and in the office at different times?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we honestly, we love to come up with acronyms. We don't have an acronym for this yet. So we talk about the remote employee experience as TREE. That's our acronym, the remote employee experience.
Love it.
So that's our focus. And it really consists of, how do you attract talent? How do you hire? How do you onboard? How do you keep them engaged? How do you train them? Right? How do you measure performance? And then how you offboard. So that's like the whole employee life cycle, right?
Mhm.
Um, Now, when you're talking about location independence or distributed workforce, and we also have our definition of what hybrid is. So 4 days a week, people in office. I don't give a ish. It is not hybrid.
Okay.
4 days in office is not hybrid. No, no, no. We don't believe that.
Right.
So when you have people in different locations, it's the research out there has already shown. Shout out to Buffer. They do a state of remote work that is fantastic, and they've been doing the state of remote work since like 2000. I want to say 16 or 17, roughly. You guys can fact check that.
Yep.
But what's great about that is they have this question that they ask in the survey: what's your biggest struggle with while working remotely? And when you add up all the different struggles, I think there's one that says, I stay home too often because I don't have a reason to leave. Another one is collaborating across time zones. Another one is, collaborating with my teams. And then another one, which is about 15% roughly, is loneliness.
Yeah.
So when you add all of those together, it's about 60% of the biggest struggles deal with connection,
Yep.
right?
That makes sense.
So, what we advise our clients to do is to create what we call a social connection strategy.
Hmm.
And we separate connections into three buckets: professional connections, which are, your colleagues, associations; lifestyle connections, so like your friends, your hobbies, the things you like to do for fun; and then intimate connections, believe it or not, like romantic relationships. Spiritual is really intimate, right? It's a spiritual, it's a close thing to your heart, and even politics, like those things are really close to people's hearts. So that's an intimate relationship. So we talk about those different buckets, right?
Interesting.
And an individual needs fulfillment in all of those buckets. So as a company of hybrid and remote, um, you have to be really intentional about, okay, if 60% of the struggles are around connection, hmm, maybe we should address that.
Mhm.
So what a social connection strategy does is it assesses what you do is you go out and you would assess what your employees are feeling, how they're feeling, what connections they're lacking,
Mhm.
and then you would design a strategy around, okay, what type of events or type of things can we organize that will help people connect in those ways. So that's a really big thing. And then, of course, when you talk about you have process, how outside of connection, completely outside of connection, but that's the big one that we focus on.
Yeah.
But we also have operations. We do that. Internal marketing. All of those things that you in the employee
Yeah.
experience when you're hybrid or remote,
Yeah.
you have to do intentionally. You have to plan for. So that's what we
Yeah.
mean when we talk about intentionality.
I love that. I love the social connection strategy. I think that I agree with you too. I think hybrid is 2 to 3 days in the office. That's what we have at Sketa. We have 2 days in the office.
I
And when
concur.
we have those days, it is all about social connection. We have lunch, we bond, we talk about our lives outside of work. We try to create a lot of unstructured time. So we're not just in Zooms in the office, right? Which I think is
No.
one of the biggest struggles right now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In
So
office Zooms. No, no.
no, no. I love that focus actually, and it's a unique one that not a lot of our thought leaders on this pod have had. So, thank you for bringing that to us. So, what about those who are worried that their culture is going to start to fade? When they implement flexible work. So I saw you posted on LinkedIn the other day, when there's some kind of a pandemic, right? Everyone's yes, let's go remote, right? It's we're panicking, but then once everything starts to calm down, they're very quick to say now get your butts back in the office, right? So how do we think about this? How do we make people understand or feel more comfortable with flexible work?
Yeah, I'm trying to be a lot more empathetic. I'm a real, oh, let's go,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've had a lot more people kind of shine the light on this that the people who are in charge today, um, they became successful in it from being in person.
Yeah.
They became successful on the golf course. They
That's true.
became successful,
Yeah.
shaking hands and making deals at conferences. So, like I'm like, okay, I need to be a little bit more
It's
empathetic
what we
to,
know, right? It's what we know. It's like what we grew
yeah.
up with. Yeah.
Um, but my problem is most of these organizations don't measure their culture to begin with.
Hmm.
So to me, like I haven't seen one return to office headline from an organization accompanied with data. And actually, the biggest one that blows my mind was when Amazon required a return to office.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, Amazon is most likely the best data driven company in the world.
Yeah.
Are you telling me you didn't have any? Actually, there's an article where the top executive admitted that he's never seen any data to prove that their culture dipped during the pandemic or dipped when there's remote work. So there's only so much you can do, Jenny.
Yeah.
If leaders want it for whatever, to me, I feel like leadership in a lot of organizations are just not being truthful. And I think that's why people are really upset.
Hmm.
If someone just came out and said, hey, look, I'm requiring everyone to come back to the office because our buildings are empty and we've paid for this and we're going to lose our tax subsidies from the city and we got to do this and the city's putting pressure on us because they're no longer having any stuff downtown. We have to do our part. That's a whole different discussion. At least you're being honest. I may not agree
Yeah.
with it, but to say that our culture is disconnected, where's the proof, Jenny?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Have
love
you
that.
seen have you seen any return to office with any data behind it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you?
Not a lot. No, not a ton. I mean, I've seen a lot of data from folks like the Flex Index putting out like how
No.
people are doing it, when they are doing it, but from
Right.
a like
But from
ENPS, like
from a
ENPS.
company that says we are returning to office and here is the data why. Have you seen that?
I don't think so. That's
I
not the
I,
headline
I
I'm
would love to
seeing.
see it. I'd love to
Yeah.
see it.
Not seen that at all. I actually see, I mean, we do EMPS here and we see a lot of success with the hybrid work schedule, not fully remote or fully in office, but people do seem to be pretty happy with having that flexibility to work where they want to work. But
Yeah, the choice. You know, and to me, I
yeah,
would love to see more studies on pure choice hybrid because
yeah,
I would love to really know because like I feel like a lot of people are happy to go in a couple times a week because they feel like if I don't go in a couple times a week, they may make me go in 5 times a week. So
right.
they're like, "Ooh, we love hybrid. We're fine with it once or twice a week."
Yeah,
I would prefer to see some stats where an organization says, "We're 100% choice. Trust me, you can do whatever you want. We have an office." Then I would love to see the average number of days that people are actually going in on site because I believe it wouldn't
right.
even be once a week.
Well, it depends on the intentionality too, right? So, like, if the leaders are intentionally putting together events and reasons to come in and see each other, then people would probably want to go in more, right?
Yeah,
So I
learning and
think,
development. Yeah, we talk about that in our social connection strategy.
yeah,
Like how can the workplace become your strategic advantage?
right,
And it can become your strategic advantage if you're doing things like that.
exactly.
Learning and development, mentorship,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
uh,
that's the biggest one, I think, honestly.
presentations, volunteering, coming together to volunteer,
Yeah,
coming together to whiteboard on some
yeah.
really complex ideas.
Be
Those are reasons
human
why people want to go in.
and be human together, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. Can you share an example of a recent client, and no name, you don't need to name names of
Hmm.
you know, that pain they were feeling about flexible work and how you kind of turn them around on it, or any other example you can think of that our listeners might learn from?
Yeah, yeah, and actually, I'll share their name because they're pretty proud of this, and it might be a little bit of a different scenario than you were asking for, but we offer fractional people operations for remote and hybrid teams. So if you're a startup that just received Series A and you don't have a director of people ops, you can hire us on a part-time basis to serve in that context, in that capacity.
Yeah, yeah.
So I am also the director of people operations for a company called Gold Medal International. They are a sock manufacturer out of Manhattan.
Huh.
Well, prior to the pandemic, they had a policy that said no working from home, period. So when the pandemic happened, they're like, "Uh-oh, like we have to kind of change our handbook."
Hmm.
But and I will give Paul and Lewis, the CEO and the president of the company, huge accolades because I never thought I would be part of a manufacturing company. Like think about that. Like most people think remote and hybrid is only for tech companies.
Hmm.
And it's so untrue. Actually, some of I think if you look through like the most amount of people, I think health entities are really, really high. Also legal,
Insurance too. Insurance companies
insurance,
are blowing
huge.
up.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
So they reached out and they said, "Hey, we've noticed something from our employees as the pandemic was getting safer to get together." They were like, "Wow, people are really happy. Like their faces are happy." Now, in New York, that commute on the train is difficult for
Hmm.
some people. It can be, I think their average commute was an hour and 40 minutes, you know? So they approached us and they said, "Hey, we think we want to implement, we want to allow this flexibility forever and rewrite our policies." So we came in, we did a full assessment. So that's what we do for any client that we work with. We do what we call diagnosis. We interview all the C-suite individually,
Hmm.
and then we interview their teams without them present so that they can voice
Yep.
themselves
Yeah.
freely. And then we do a company-wide survey. And what we found, most people on average, they wanted to come into the office 1.5 days per week. So they went with one. They required one. And it's been 2 years. And do you know when they needed to hire people, they're one of few in uh, the whole industry in their industry. They make socks, they make apparel.
Yeah.
And most people, all their competitors, full time in office 5 days a week, real fast.
Huh.
So when we posted a job, we got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants. So to me, I'm really proud of that story. It's a success story.
Yeah.
And
You've
they took
driven
a leap of faith.
talent. You're probably getting people from the competitors. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Cool.
Yes.
Cool.
Flexibility is king. People will take flexibility over $20,000. That's the number now.
Oh, no way.
20,
Okay.
20, I think you have to make 100. I think for this research I heard is you have to make at least $100,000 because I think that's the
Yeah.
the threshold for happiness, I think, is like
Yeah.
100.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So people would take 100 versus 120 to be fully remote.
All right. So I know we've got a short pod here, but this is just so interesting. I have to ask you about not safe for remote work because I saw it on LinkedIn and I was like, this was such a good idea.
All right,
Um,
Jenny, you could ask
what?
me.
All right. So what's the craziest story that you heard so far that is appropriate?
Okay. So not safe for remote work. So we have a podcast called RemotelyOne. Check it out, where we interview thought leaders, executives, change makers in the remote workspace. So we've had some great guests. We've had Jack Nillies recently, who was the a scientist in 1965 who created the term telecommuting.
I saw that.
So we've had him, we've had Nick Bloom on, we've had all the people. We had Chase Warrington, my man. We've had everybody on. We've had a good amount of people. So it's been really, really fun. But shout out to my co-host Rick. He was like, "This is great that we're interviewing these people and these CEOs and stuff like that. But gosh, wouldn't it be great to talk to just an individual contributor?" So
Yeah.
when we started the podcast Remotely One, we didn't want to have this boring business podcast where we were just talking about business and blah blah blah. So we added a little twist of at the end of each episode, we ask each guest to tell us their most comical story or inspirational while working remotely. So there's been some fun stories. Well, recently Rick was like, "What if we just have anyone on the show?" So hey, if you're listening to this and you have a funny story, we created a series called Not Safe for Remote Work, where we just invite anybody who has a story. It's only 15 or 20 minutes, and they just hop on and they tell their funny story. And we haven't even launched the episodes yet.
Oh,
Like,
no way.
yeah.
I thought
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
already launched.
We haven't they're gonna launch June 1st. They're gonna launch
Oh,
June
no.
1st.
So yeah, maybe you don't want to like give it away yet.
Safety Wing, the CEO, I believe I got it right. You gotta check it out. Sanjay Rosh. He used to be in the Norwegian army, a sniper.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not going to tell that story, but just go check it out.
Oh, all right, all right. You're leaving us with a little teaser. I love it. I love it.
He
All
used to
right.
be a sniper, and he had their best. They were boating, and their best friend. This is after he was a sniper, by the way. They're just hanging out on a boat, and they're best friends with all their friends. And a storm came, and they had to lock one of their friends under deck because they wouldn't put on their vest, their safety vest. It's a crazy story. Go check that out.
All right, cool. All right, Kaleem. Well, we're at the end here. I just want to say pleasure meeting you, but is there anything that, you came to this interview wanting to say that maybe I didn't ask you the right question to get it out of you? Anything you want to leave our listeners with on hybrid work?
Yeah, I would just say as leaders, as managers, and even as individual contributors, whatever you're going to do or any type of policy or any type of change management thing that you're going to do, there's two things. One, involve every level of the organization and build a cohort, right? You need every level's representation before you implement a change management initiative.
Yeah.
The second thing would be make sure you make decisions based on data. So be sure to ask the whole company how they feel about a certain thing, especially when we're talking about people stuff, and then make decisions based on that. That's the biggest piece of advice that I would give.
Love it. Love it. All right. And how can people find you?
Yes, LinkedIn, of course. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me. I'm trying to get to 10,000, so follow me. And then
Today.
yes, we'll do it today. Do it today. And then I would say you go to RemotelyOne.com if you want to get on the podcast. We're looking for not safe remote work stories, so get on that. Okay. And I'm on Threads, and that's about it.
All right. Cool.
Oh, and blendmeinc.com, obviously. Go to blendmeinc.com if you want to learn more about project-based or fractional HR leadership.
Awesome. We'll definitely check that out, everybody. Thank you again, Kaleem. It's been a huge pleasure having you on the show and meeting you. Like I said, breath of fresh air on this Friday when we're just ready to get out of here. I loved it. Thank you again.
Awesome. Peace.